Hi everyone, and welcome to another From the Gallery. I'm your host, Lori Neuenfeldt, Gallery Director in the Department of Art. And today I'm going to be talking with Associate Professor Dominic Lippillo about his recent work and also teaching at MSU.
Hi Lori, thank you for having me today.
Hi Dominic, I'm so glad that you took the time to be here. I know we're gearing up for another fall. Students are coming back,
right.
And you're teaching. So what classes are you teaching this semester?
I'm teaching 4 classes this semester. Video art, it'll be the second time I've taught that. Studio lighting, a special topics class called The Found Image, and then a first year experience class called Truth in Photography.
Wow.
So I'm able to incorporate a lot of my research into what I'm teaching this semester, which is really wonderful. It's not always, that way. So.
Well, and I know your research has developed so much in the past couple of years, and a lot of that is informed by where you were a year ago, not going into a fall of teaching, right, but of going on a sabbatical. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Right?
Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about what is a sabbatical for those who may not know, but also what was specifically interesting about your research during that time?
Okay, great. So with my sabbatical, first of all, that was 1 semester off of teaching where I can really dive into my research. I proposed to do a residency, and I was able to get a residency at the iPark Foundation in East Haddam, Connecticut, and that was a peer-reviewed process. So I spent a month in East Haddam, photographing around the area, living there full-time in a house with 5 other artists, and it was a really wonderful opportunity to be in a different part of the country and experience making work there. I've never been to Connecticut, but I was also, as I mentioned, living with these other artists and just having these conversations with them. 2 of them were composers, 1 was a poet, and then there were 2 other visual artists.
Wow, so diverse.
So diverse, with really wonderful and stimulating dinner time conversations.
Which is why residencies, I always say, it's so important for artists to be able to have that interaction. Right. So it does take up a whole semester. Was there anything else involved other than your time in Connecticut?
So I had that 1 month in Connecticut. I also had 2 solo shows during that time. I drove my hatchback from Starkville to Connecticut, and along the way I dropped off a body of work at Manifest Gallery in Cincinnati, Ohio, and then spent the night there and drove to Youngstown, Ohio, where I had a solo show of my collaborative work, Conflation, at Youngstown State University. So I had those 2 solo shows going on at the same time I was doing my residency, and right before I went to leave, I shipped out another solo show's worth of work to Orange Coast College in California. So I had these solo shows going on, as well as doing the residency. So that really filled up my time during my sabbatical.
It also speaks to how important sabbaticals are to our faculty, to allow them to research. It sounds like, yours was very productive.
It was pretty productive, and then I finished it up in December. I did a portfolio review in New Orleans at Photo NOLA. So I was able to meet with 9 editors, curators, publishers in my field and talk to them about my work, what's working, what's not working, what can I do to push it to the next level. So that was a really amazing sabbatical.
Let's talk about your work, okay? Yeah. I know you brought some images today, and it kind of you'll be able to explain to us what it is we're looking at. So if we can look at the first image, and you tell us a little bit about when this was shot. So you're a photographer, and talk about that. Okay.
So I am a photographer, and I work in a process with digital photography where I am either adding things to the image or taking things away from the image. So technically that's how I work. But this first image that we're looking at is from my MFA thesis work when I was in graduate school at Ohio University. And the body of work is called Under a Calm Surface. And for this project, I was going into the house that my wife and I lived in at the time and going back to my parents' house, and I was photographing in this space. In doing so, I was approaching the space as an empty canvas. I was removing everything from a room, thinking about the potential that room had to store memory and to store the energy of the past inhabitants of the home. So I would build these tableaus inside of the space. So that we're looking at a space that was used as our dining room, but I moved in the bookcase and I stacked up the books. And I wanted to create this experience that could only exist in a photograph to play on the truth of photography, but also to talk about memory, talk about the way space and place is used, but also to think about these people that may have lived there and how the space was used.
So no people actually in the image, but we do get a sense that there was a presence.
Right.
Yeah.
So the absence of the presence of the person is something that has always fascinated me, as well as space and place. So the body of work spans several years. I started it in grad school, then worked on it all the way up to my first year living in Mississippi. So I think there's about 5 or 6 different houses that I photographed during that time. My family moved around a lot, so I had this experience of living in these rental houses. So that childhood experience of moving around a lot is what came to influence my research and the work that I'm doing as a photographer.
And really informing these places that are sort of familiar to anyone who's been able to move or see the interior of these homes. I know you've spoke a lot about what are the similarities of some of these homes that you're seeing over and over again, even though you could be in different states altogether.
Right. Yeah, the familiar and the unfamiliar is a huge part of it.
So then you transition to this other photograph that we have here is a sample of the work that you moved towards, or is this part of the same series?
This is from the series I did right after Under a Calm Surface ended. Okay. This is from a series called 15 Homes. In this project, I was literally taking photographs. I was researching my family's archive of images, so I was going back to their photo albums and looking at houses that were depicted from over the past 30 years. And I was taking the images, scanning them into Photoshop, and then digitally removing the people, only using information that existed in the photograph. And then I would enlarge the images to 20 by 20 up to 24 by 30.
Much larger than the original.
Much larger. But I was leaving the blemishes, the dust, the fingerprints, the evidence that these were handled by people and these were snapshots and that these weren't things that I shot. So it lent an air of authenticity to the work.
It's similar, I think of when we think of archaeology and you're wanting to have these pieces found in situ even though the people are not there. There's this documentation. But
it's
really
like
interesting.
Mining evidence in a way.
Yes.
But I was just looking for the essence of home and family, and if any of these places existed for me as home, or if they just existed as a house.
And still being informed by your past, by your own experience.
Right. But using that vernacular, these images could be your images or the viewer's images. So there's something about the familiar and the unfamiliar with that as well.
And I know you've used that word, or the uncanny, which is one of my favorite feelings described, I think, by Freud originally, the uncanny. So now your work transitions once again, right, with another photograph you've brought.
Right. And this next photograph is from a series called As the Fog Clears. So I was still fascinated with working with found images, and that became something that I've continued in my practice. So instead of looking at space and place, I was always interested in the absence of a presence of a person, but now I was interested in the absence of a place and what that person would, how that presence of a person could fill a non-place or a void of a place. So I was taking these figures, I was scanning the photographs into Photoshop, printing the photographs out again at a slightly larger scale, then using an X-Acto knife and cutting the people out of the photograph. And then I built this box out of foam core board, and I cut a hole for a light and cut a hole for a fog machine. So I'm fogging this void of a diorama, and then I'm photographing the fog emanating this space, and it's like this person is time traveling from one photograph into this new photograph. In a way, they become ghosts. Are they haunting the space, or are these memories haunting us when we go into a space? So again, it's the familiar and the unfamiliar approached in a different way.
Wow, yeah, and I like that your process, you're always exploring a new, how do I incorporate new technique or new, it's shifting, and now it kind of relates, like you said, to this found object class you're teaching, and I love all these connections. So the last series, most recent one, this is The Stories We Tell Ourselves. Right. And I know you gave a talk on campus about this, and it's received a lot of great feedback over the past year. I know you've won some MAC grants, Mississippi Arts Commission grants,
Right.
and
The South Arts Award.
South Arts Awards, and even the Mississippi Museum of Art, right? You had a piece.
Right,
selected.
yes, and the Invitational.
Yeah.
Right.
So tell us about what that grouping is about.
So with this project, this is one of the images I made in East Haddam, Connecticut. I'm looking for these non-specific American landscapes. So I grew up in the Midwest, I grew up in Ohio, and that always felt like very undescriptive to me. So when I moved to Mississippi, instead of looking for these things that were unique to the South, I started looking for these things that were unique just to any part of the country. That made me feel like I was at home. So I've always made photographs in and around the place that I lived in, but I felt the need to step out of that and start exploring the landscape. So I was transitioning the idea of what is home or what does home feel like when you look at the landscape, and it became these non-specific places. So I start by photographing a landscape, and then I search through these 35mm slides that I bought off of eBay or found in antique stores or that were given to me, and I find people to inhabit these new spaces that I'm photographing. I scan the negative in, or the slide in, and digitally remove them from the slide and put them into the landscape, where then I digitally add fog and atmosphere to create this uncanny feeling of this person who is trapped in the space, studying the space, interacting with the space. Seems like the person belongs, but is just a visitor. And at first glance, you know, they seem like they fit, but the more you study it, they don't.
So yeah, it's completely constructed. I think that's what makes allow a viewer to watch and look at it a lot longer, and informed by film stills. We think of, like you said, the people looking off screen or looking at something that might be happening or greater. And we're having to fill that story in.
Exactly. So looking at like Steven Spielberg and looking at film and literature like Raymond Carver. So looking for these short stories or these things that seem fantastic and unbelievable. How do you put that into a photographic image to let it kind of expand your field of vision to move out of the photograph and into your memory is something I'm interested in.
So where do you see yourself going next in the last couple of seconds we have left?
I'm still excited about this, so that's what I'm working on currently.
Fantastic. Well, good luck this semester with the returning students and the 4 classes.
Thank you.
That's great. It's very exciting. And if you have any recent awards or work, I'm definitely going to want to make sure we tell people. So congratulations on all your past success.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you for joining us again on From the Gallery. If you have any questions or any suggestions for artists or anyone we should interview, you can contact me at lneuenfeldt@caad.msstate.edu. Thank you.